Welcome to Canada Conversations, part of Delaware Debates 2016, produced by Delaware Public Media in collaboration with the University of Delaware's Center for Political Communication and with support from AARP. I'm Delaware Public Media News Director Tom Byrne. This Canada Conversation, taped on the campus of Delaware State University, focuses on the race for U.S. House, and we are joined by Democrat Sean Barney. Thanks very much for joining us, Sean.
Thank you, Tom. It's wonderful to be here.
Well, let's start with your background and what you believe in that background separates you from the other candidates running that makes you better suited to represent the state in the U.S. House.
Well, I was in the Marine Corps. I enlisted in the Marine Corps after 9/11, ended up serving, fighting, and was wounded in Fallujah, Iraq. And I'm just very lucky to be here, to have the opportunity to talk with you here today. I'm here because I served with some incredible Marines. I was shot through the neck when I was fighting with the Marines in Fallujah. And I'm here because I had Marines that got me from a street corner in the center of the city of Fallujah to Fallujah Surgical on the outskirts of that city in just 12 minutes. I mean, they just flew. And they, most importantly, worked together with great urgency, with great sense of mission. And that's what Marines do. I mean, we come to the Marine Corps from very different backgrounds. We have very different beliefs. But ultimately, we know that it's our job to work together and to get the job done for the good of the country. And I'm running because, like many people, I'm frustrated with what I see in Washington, which is we're seeing members of Congress not work together, not act with urgency, and not address the big issues that are facing our country. And I think we have a right to expect from our members of Congress what Marines do naturally. We expect that they work together, that they get the job done for the good of the country. And it's more urgent now than ever.
None of the candidates in the field this year, yourself included, have been elected to statewide office, and that's often seen as a prerequisite for a job like a seat in the U.S. House. What would you say to a voter who is concerned about your experience and your ability to go to Washington and get things done?
Sure. I'm the only candidate in this race who has worked on a policy and legislative basis in Washington. I worked for Senator Carper on the waterfront of federal issues, from the federal budget and taxes to federal education policy, national security, foreign policy, Veterans Affairs, you name it. So I've had the experience of working with Senator Carper. I'm the only candidate in this race who's actually helped pass legislation through Congress, get it signed by the president. I did that at a time when Congress was controlled by Republicans and the president of the United States was a Republican. So I learned, working with Senator Carper, the art of working across the aisle to get results for Delaware. And it's going to be vitally important for Delaware's next member of Congress to do that. John Carney today is in the House, in the minority. He has to work with Republicans to get results and to serve Delaware. I have the experience of doing that. I also have the experience, having worked as policy director to our governor here, that I know the issues that are important to Delaware. I know our challenges here. I know what we are looking to accomplish and need to accomplish. And finally, this is not a state office. This is not a domestic policy office. This is an office where members of Congress at times cast votes that either immediately send people to war, or even if they don't know that they're doing it at the time, their vote makes it more likely that young Americans are going to go to war and are going to fight and die overseas. So the fact that I've had a foreign policy and national security portfolio with Senator Carper, the fact that I have lived the consequences of a reckless foreign policy in Iraq, President Bush's mistaken decisions, and seen the consequences and the travesty that was on the ground firsthand, gives me a perspective that nobody else in this race has.
As you alluded to in your answer, getting things done in Washington has been difficult in recent years. Based on that experience that you've had in Washington, if elected, how do you help cross that partisan divide, reach across the aisle, as you mentioned?
Well, as I mentioned, I've done it. I've worked with Senator Carper in a Republican Congress, passed laws, got them signed by a Republican president. And you learn from doing that a lot of it's about, first of all, listening. You need to understand where others are coming from. This is a large, diverse country of more than 300 million people. So members of Congress come representing many different perspectives, and you need to have the ability to sit down with them, listen to their concerns, and find a way to reach common ground. I've had that experience working with Senator Carper on the largest expansion of Medicare in the history of the program, at the addition of prescription drugs to Medicare. This was an idea that started out as a Democratic idea. It ultimately got done in a Republican Congress and signed by a Republican president because Democrats worked across the aisle, some key leaders did, to get the job done.
Concerns about creating and retaining jobs in Delaware have certainly been front and center this year, especially in the wake of the Dow-DuPont merger. What steps, if you're elected, can you take as a congressman to boost economic growth raise wages and just generally create jobs in the first state and elsewhere?
Well, I'm working in the private sector. I'm the president of a venture capital firm in Wilmington, and I think it's vitally important at this time, particularly given what we're seeing with DuPont, that we create a more entrepreneurial economy in Delaware. We have had great relationships with some legacy employers over the years that have brought great benefits to the state, but many of those employers are reducing their footprint here. Because of the presence of the DuPont company, we have one of the greatest concentrations of scientific and technical talent in the world. And a big question now is, are they going to dissipate, spread to the wind, and be a brain drain for Delaware? Or can we put some of them to work creating, growing new companies here? If they create it here, it's more likely to be sticky here, to rely on the talent here, and to create good paying jobs going forward in Delaware. So I want to make sure that companies that are getting started here have access to capital, to lab space, and we need to take care of our quality of life if this is going to be a place where young talent wants to come, live, and recreate. In the city of Wilmington, where I live, we need to get a handle on our gun violence problem, or else that's not going to be a place where young talent comes, and we're not going to be able to create that entrepreneurial, tech-focused economy that we need moving forward in Delaware.
I do want to touch on crime a little bit, and since you did, well, let's move there. This summer has been a difficult summer across the country in many places. Number of high-profile shootings of individuals by police, number of police officers shot in incidents. That's raised tensions between law enforcement and the communities that they work in. How can you, if elected, address this issue, help build some trust back between law enforcement and individuals?
I bring a unique perspective to this race that no other candidate does. I've served in the Marine Corps. I served in an environment in Fallujah, Iraq, where you didn't always know who was friendly, who was not, who might be seeking to do harm to you and to those in your platoon. So I've been in that position where I've had to make split-second decisions. So I understand the hard job that law enforcement does. At the same time, having had that experience, I understand that doing a hard job is not a license to do whatever you want to do and not have to explain yourself and not be accountable. So I think as a public leader, I have the opportunity to be able to speak to these issues in a way where I have credibility with law enforcement, but I can also insist that we have better training, better practices, and that we do right by people, because people deserve to be safe and be served by the police and not end up victims of unwarranted violence.
There's also the issue of terrorism, security threats, both domestic and international these days. How can you ensure that Americans are both free and safe, which at times seem to be at odds with each other?
Well, I come from the perspective of a Marine and Iraq War veteran who signed up after 9/11 as an admirer of the World War II generation who stepped forward after Pearl Harbor and served their country. And as someone who saw us veer off course in choosing to go to Iraq, and also in a lot of ways that we compromised our civil liberties. We went way overboard, and in an understandable way, we were emotional in our reactions, but I am one who wants to bring America home to its values in terms of restoring our civil liberties, in terms of shutting down Guantanamo Bay, which was a great stain on the reputation of this country and remains. So I bring a perspective that we can be safe and free, and we need to get back to the America that we've been, which is we're safe when we are true to our values that have served us well for so long.
I want to move on to immigration. That's also an issue that is spoken about a great deal these days. What is your position on undocumented immigrants in the United States, and also America opening its doors to refugees from war-torn countries like Syria?
Well, this is exactly where we need a functioning Congress. The fact that Congress can't get together, can't work together to address big issues, this is where it hurts us. We need comprehensive immigration reform. Generation after generations, immigrants have been a source of strength to this country. So we need to bring people out of the shadows. We need to give them the opportunity to be fully productive and contributing members of society. And I understand this better than most because many of the members of my platoon were immigrants. I worked with Senator Carper's office after I got back to get citizenship for people who had already put their lives on the line for the country and were having trouble getting citizenship. We are deporting veterans today who've already served, put their lives on the line, who may have medical needs, may have PTSD, and deserve services from the VA, and instead we're deporting them. This is shameful. So we need to have comprehensive immigration reform. We need to bring people in from the shadows, and we need to be that country that is the country of Lady Liberty, welcoming immigrants to this country as a source of strength.
I want to finish on education. President Obama has proposed making 2 years of community college free for all Americans. Where do you stand on that issue, and more broadly, the federal government's role in education from pre-K all the way through higher education, collegiate education?
Right. I've been a beneficiary of some of the opportunity that our country has provided to veterans. I was able to go to Yale Law School and study economics and public policy with the benefits of the Veterans Administration as a veteran. I believe this country built a middle class and built one of the most civically engaged generations of all time in our country as a result of the GI Bill. So I think these are investments that make us all better off. The compact that I want to strike with young people is the compact that we strike with those who go to our service academies. I'm privileged to serve on Senator Carper's Service Academy Nomination Board and to interview young people every year who are looking to go to our service academies. And what we say to them is, you commit to serve our country, we will allow you to graduate from college debt-free. I believe that we ought to strike that balance and that compact with all our youth, so that if you serve this country, it doesn't have to be in the military, it can be in the Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, other ways to serve. But if you commit to serve to this country, we ought to make it possible for you to graduate from college debt-free.
And for pre-K through higher education, what's the federal government's role?
It's to level the playing field. That's historically been the role of the federal government. We've got great inequities in our educational system, and it traces back to, in the country, to the reliance on local property taxes to fund education, which ends up resulting in very unequal schools. And of course, we have a very tortured history here in Delaware in terms of some of our racial inequities and racial injustices. So the federal government has a very important role to play through Title I and some of the funding that it provides to level the playing field. And as a general matter, as a force for making sure that we are constantly focused on whether all children are getting the quality education that they deserve. I have a 6-year-old daughter. She's in the public schools. I have a deep personal investment in this, and I think it's a matter of justice that we need to keep our eyes squarely focused on.
All right. Sean Barney, Democratic Party candidate for U.S. House, we thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
You can find all of our candidate conversations online at delawarepublic.org and delawaredebates.org. Candidate conversations are taped at Delaware State University and are part of Delaware Debates 2016, produced by Delaware Public Media in collaboration with the University of Delaware's Center for Political Communication, with support from AARP. Thanks for watching.